Can we get an updated video later in the week about your thoughts about Grandmaster? Sure. Hello everybody, welcome back to the EducatedCollins Snaps channel. How you doing? So we're just going to have a more updated opinion about Grandmaster since time has passed. Decided to post it now since you're going to have time in the weekend to complete the weekend missions if you do get convinced to get Grandmaster, do this video or anything like that. So let's get started. So Grandmaster, we kind of already know his abilities, right? Things haven't changed. You move one of your other on reveal cards in the lane you play Grandmaster to the middle lane, and then it triggers again. It doesn't work with Odin because Odin has this requirement, this like stopgap to prevent infinite combos, and because it has that requirement to prevent infinite combos, it doesn't work with Grandmaster. So that's kind of an issue there. Don't know if they're gonna fix it or even if it's easy to fix, because to make this work with Grandmaster, you would allow like Odin into Bar Sinister triggering itself over and over and over again, right? Like they didn't want that, so that's kind of why it doesn't work with Odin in particular. Though I wonder if they can find like a coding way that works, but that's something to keep in mind. Now I'm just gonna go through some of my updated thoughts and opinions. So usually when I recommend cards, I will usually pick them up myself, right? Just because obviously, you know, I'm recommending because I think they're good. And most of the time I do that. I will say that the last card I didn't do that was Kyra. The only reason is I haven't made any decks that particularly use Kyra, and I have tokens. So if I find a deck that I really want to play that uses Kyra, I'll probably spend tokens. The only downside is I'm missing enough cards that it will take multiple days for Kyra to roll out in the shop. So you could just say like you're going to use this card at some point. But still, like if I do need the card, I will pick it up. But generally, I always get most of the cards I recommend, unless you know things are going wrong. Anyways, even though I didn't recommend Grandmaster, I held out hope just in general, just because I think it's a card that can see play, can get better. So I did buy the card, did use my spotlights on it, and I would overall still say I recommend this card. If you are a person that cares about flexibility, that cares about using like some of the hot new decks that might show up, things like that, Grandmaster is just a card I think opens up a lot of windows for deck design, opens up a lot of windows for new deck archetypes that won't be able to be played without the Grandmaster. And I think that's just important for me. I really like the deck building aspect of, you know, making new decks, trying to figure out something that works for me. And this is like a pretty important tool, I would say, for having options in deck building, especially when it comes to on reveal type decks. So those are some of the reasons, but we'll talk about some of the other ones. So it's a card that gets better with time in terms of you have more knowledge about the card, what combos are actually powerful, what combos are not. And you also just, every time a new on reveal is released, you get to reanalyze the card in the context of a Grandmaster support card. I think when you look at the stats, a lot of times the Grandmaster decks are doing bad is because they're thinking about Grandmaster in a different way. So when you see Grandmaster, a lot of people are thinking, how do I build a Grandmaster deck? And I don't really think that's where Grandmaster shines. You want to say, how can I build a deck that works, but Grandmaster is a support piece that makes it even better, but still works without the Grandmaster? A lot of the decks I see kind of need Grandmaster to be their win condition, right? Like, okay, if you do the setup and then you Grandmaster, bam, then Grandmaster makes it incredible. Whereas a lot of decks that seem to be doing well are decks that can work if you throw Grandmaster away. You just replace Grandmaster. The deck works perfectly fine. However, you open up this window of like, here is a cool combo on turn 4, turn 5, maybe turn 3, where Grandmaster can shine and provide some value there. So I think that kind of thing will change over time. People get better. People see what the results are saying. And, you know, that's one way of looking at Grandmaster that seems to be working out. Some of the combos of Grandmaster I think are just very powerful. There's a lot of like strategies that people haven't fully utilized. Things like Jubilee, right? You Jubilee the on 3 or 4, and then you Grandmaster, you get another card from your deck. Shuri works, right? People have been doing Shuri with Scar. Destroy, people have been saying Destroy's fantastic. Modok, not Modok, what am I saying? More Ronin, Darkhawk decks, right? Those are also doing very well. And there's just a lot of different archetypes that can be played with Grandmaster, and more to be discovered. People have been trying Wave into either double Eliot, double Doctor Doom, that kind of stuff, right? There's a lot of potential with this card to really make a lot of strong combos. Now, this card still has consistency issues. I would say like that's kind of the biggest issue of this card, where you need your deck to work well. You need no like disruption from your opponent, things like that. And the curve has to be good. It has to make sense. You have to have enough mana or energy to play this card. So there's still issues with consistency. That's why I think if you have a deck that doesn't need Grandmaster, you lose some of those issues where the consistency is not a big problem. And then it's just a fun card for me. Like, it's a card that really shines in deck building, where trying to figure out what tools you need to make a deck pop. It's one of those like final card pieces that could really make work for me. And it just has a lot of different decks you can play it in. Like, we're gonna go through some of the archetypes in the game that people are playing with, and there's just a lot of options. So because of that, I would recommend this card. I still think it's good. Still think it's a card you might miss later on. If you don't get it now, you might have to end up, spending your tokens, things like that. You don't get the kickback, anything there. So there's just a lot of good things for it if you ignore the pure data. Now, I do think there's going to be some players that don't need Grandmaster at all. It's just not the type of card you would really want to play. There's consistent issues, and maybe you don't like Wong or even ongoing center decks. Then, if you know yourself, it's unlikely I'll play a deck with Grandmaster in it. Then obviously don't pick up the card. But I just think there's like Grandmaster fits in such a large amount of compositions that it's likely that over the course of Marvel Snap, you're gonna find a deck that you want to play that has a Grandmaster in it. So that's kind of my thoughts there. Now, so I have a little bit more things to show here. So first thing is I need to change my camera size. But here it's showcasing like a tournament that recently finalized the Lambie $700 Open, and second place was a Grandmaster deck. So that kind of shows the potential of Grandmaster. Even so early in its release cycle, people are finding ways of incorporating the card into a tournament structure that seems to work. So it shows like it's not a dead card in the deck, right? Tournament, you really need all your cards to make sense. Well, that's not always true. Like, sometimes you can run like dead tech cards like Shang-Chi in the matchups and it doesn't matter. So that's not always true that you need all the cards to make sense. So you could argue like, oh, they could have won without the Grandmaster, and that's might be true, but it did serve its purpose, right? And obviously you'll talk to the player, they're like, oh yeah, the Grandmaster did work in some matchups. And it just like, there is a world where Grandmaster is a strong card. Grandmasters can do well in tournaments, things like that. So you might look at the stats and say, oh, Grandmaster is unplayable, but there has been evidence to show that it's not. So that's just something I wanted to share there. And Destroy is generally, doing well anyway. So that's one thing. Next thing I wanted to show was just looking through some of the data for Grandmaster. So if we were to just look at the meta, right, and you'll just look at the holistic look of Grandmaster, it's down here, -30 with almost 45% win rate, right? So not good, right? And that's kind of the issue Grandmaster is dealing with. When you look at that data, it just doesn't look good. There's a lot of people playing Grandmaster. They're playing it in lots of different decks, and they're playing it wrong, honestly. So here we can kind of look through a more centered metric. And the the takeaway here is not the win rates or the cube rates or anything like that. The takeaway here is just the number of different archetypes you can play Grandmaster, and that's really what I want to share here. So here we have this Darkhawk list, right? There's also a Ronin list in essence. Here we have another Darkhawk, pure Darkhawk list. Here we have Destroy. Here we have another Ronin list. Here you have this Patriot list, right? So there's even Patriot people are playing with, more Destroy. Here we have, this is like this is the Grandmaster deck I would think about day one if I wanted to like try Grandmaster. Oh, put in a Wong deck, you know, with Black Panther, White Tiger, you know, that kind of thing. But you know, not doing that well. Obviously, it has the same Wong issues. It's not like Grandmaster makes the Wong issues disappear. It just supplements the Wong issues. But still, like that is an archetype you can play with here, and you know, even more kind of weird Electro Ramp Nimrod stuff here, but just kind of showcasing the different flexibility of Grandmaster. And I think as people get better, as people refine what actually makes a Grandmaster support card good, then you'll have better stats, better ways of utilizing it. And this isn't even all of the ways to play Grandmaster, right? We talked earlier about Jubilee, Shuri, a lot of different other on reveals that can take advantage of the Grandmaster effect, especially with Ravonna. Having it move up to a 1-0 is just very, very enticing. So that's just what I wanted to share here. Just there's a lot of different ways of using Grandmaster that we haven't really put to the test, put into the data, that could just show to be very, very good. And finally, you know, just I guess we could look through some of the comments here. Surprised you didn't prevent some of the best options. Destroy, yeah, Destroy. This card I really haven't seen, and Lockjaw I also really haven't seen be played, but it is something to be interested in. Goes well in Destroy, yeah, I agree. Work if you Goblin, no. I mean, if you get Goblin, you can send it back, but if you're the one Goblin, you can't like move their Goblin. And even if you did, let's say you could, right? You would move their Goblin, then they would activate the Goblin and send it back to you. It sounds horrible. The only way, I guess you could like fill your lane and then do that, but like that's so specific, right? So things like that, but overall, right? I do think if you want to pick up Grandmaster, that's fine. Like that's my personal opinion. I think it's going to be a card you will see in the future, and people were asking for me to make a video or talk about it later on, and I think during the weekend makes sense because you can get that kickback. So yeah, there is a comment here. They don't like it, right? People are coping hard. It's trash like Wong or Mystique. Now, I don't think Mystique is bad. Like this, like Wong or Mystique. Mystique is a lot better than Wong in terms of consistency. Wong, I do think just has issues. It's very counterable and it's very telegraphed, right? So I think that is something that you can get into the same structure with a Grandmaster built or center deck where it also becomes very counterable and very telegraphed. But I think if you use it as a support card, it's not as core, so you don't have to rely on it. Then it becomes a lot less telegraphed, less counterable in essence. The only way for him to be busted is if you make a really cheap on reveal that's broken that you can combo before your opponent has to counter. I do think that is going to be a very good use, and I think you can do that already. Like cards like Rock Slide, cards like Black Widow are already pretty good. Master Mode's pretty good. If you can Zabu, things on 3, like a lot of good on reveals on 3, Shuri or Jubilee, and there's more, right, for sure. You know, Ghost Rider, something to be interested in, things like that. So there's a lot of potential there, and it's just a card I just think has a very good deck building situations potential. So overall, you know, I still think it's a card to recommend. However, you be the judge of that at the end of the day. But that's my current thoughts since people are asking. So overall, have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one.
EducatedCollins snap. Once you watch him, you won't go back. He'll teach you tomorrow snap. Your skills will be improving.